Stop what you are doing and listen closely. Do not move past this moment like it is ordinary. Something has been pressing on your spirit, and you have felt it more than once. You did not come here because you needed another random message. You came here because the pattern has become too strong to ignore. This is your final sign. But the sign may not look like what you expected. You may have been waiting for a dramatic answer, a perfect opening, or one unmistakable moment that removes every doubt. Yet heaven has been speaking in a different way. The message has been repeating through your discomfort, your endings, your silence, and your growing inability to remain where you once felt safe. Stay with me until the end. There is one truth you need to understand before you make sense of everything that has been changing around you. You are going to see why the old place feels different, why certain people no longer feel familiar, and why your spirit keeps leaning toward movement, even while your mind keeps asking for more proof. You have been asking for clarity. You have been asking for confirmation. You have been asking God to make the next step so obvious that fear has no room to speak. But what if clarity has already been arriving in pieces? What if the final sign is not another event waiting ahead of you, but the pattern that has already been forming around your life? Pay attention now. This is where many chosen ones become confused. They expect movement to begin with excitement. They expect the new door to appear first. They expect peace to arrive before the decision. But sometimes the first sign of movement is not a new opportunity. Sometimes it is the sudden realization that the old room can no longer hold the person you are becoming. You know this feeling. A place that once felt normal now feels heavy. A conversation you once tolerated now drains you. A routine you repeated for months or years suddenly feels unbearable. Nothing outside may have changed enough for other people to notice, but something inside you has changed so deeply that your old life now feels slightly out of alignment. You keep trying to explain it. You tell yourself that you are just tired. You tell yourself that you need more rest. You tell yourself that maybe you are being ungrateful. Then you return to the same environment, the same people, or the same pattern, and the feeling returns. Something in you keeps saying that this chapter cannot continue in the same way. That does not mean you hate where you are. It does not mean you should abandon wisdom. It does not mean every uncomfortable moment is a command to run. Hear this carefully. The message is not panic. The message is not reckless escape. The message is recognition. You are beginning to recognize where your spirit has outgrown an old assignment. This is why the discomfort feels so strange. You can still remember when that place made sense. You can still remember when those people felt close. You can still remember when the routine felt stable. But now the same things feel smaller, heavier, or quieter. The outer world looks familiar, yet your inner response is no longer the same. Chosen one, this matters. The enemy would love to make you believe that every change inside you is confusion. He would love to turn discernment into self-doubt. He would love to make you stay frozen until every possible risk disappears. But God does not always reveal the full road before He asks your heart to release the place where the journey can no longer continue. You have probably noticed another sign. You feel less interested in explaining yourself. There was a time when being misunderstood could keep you awake for hours. You replayed conversations. You imagined better answers. You wanted people to see your heart clearly. Now something has changed. You are beginning to feel that peace is more valuable than being perfectly understood. That shift is not small. It is one of the clearest signs that an old identity is losing its grip. The version of you that needed constant permission is growing quiet. The version of you that stayed too long just to avoid disappointing people is getting tired of negotiating with what already feels finished. Your spirit is becoming less available for endless emotional bargaining. There were years when you could carry other people and still keep moving. You listened to their problems. You solved what they refused to face. You became the strong one because someone had to be strong. But strength without boundaries becomes exhaustion. And there comes a moment when the watchman must understand that guarding everything is not the same as guarding what God assigned. This is where your identity begins to change. You are not being asked to become less compassionate. You are being taught where compassion belongs. You are not being told to abandon people. You are learning that love does not require permanent access. You are learning that a sacred assignment can end even when your heart still cares about the people connected to it. Some of you have been waking during the night with the same thought. Move, prepare, release. You do not always know what it means. You may not even know whether the movement is physical, relational, professional, or spiritual. Yet the word returns, the feeling returns, the pressure returns. Then daylight comes, and your logical mind tries to erase what your spirit noticed in the quiet. Do not rush past that. You are not required to make a dramatic decision tonight, but you are required to stop pretending you have felt nothing. There is a difference between wisdom and denial. Wisdom listens carefully and tests what it hears. Denial keeps asking for a new sign, because the old signs require a change that feels uncomfortable. This is why the title of this message carries such weight. Final does not mean God is threatening you with punishment. It means the season of endless confirmation is reaching its limit. There comes a point when another sign would not create more clarity. It would only give fear another reason to delay what has already become clear enough for your next wise step. You have seen patterns repeat. A door closes, then another one closes. A relationship changes, then your attachment to it weakens. An opportunity disappears, then a new desire begins growing quietly inside you. At first, these events seem disconnected, but when you place them beside each other, they begin to tell one story. Something is being rearranged, and this rearrangement may feel like loss before it feels like direction. That is the part nobody likes to admit. We want movement to feel like victory from the first second. We want the new chapter to arrive with music, celebration, and certainty. But many sacred transitions begin with subtraction. Something leaves before the meaning of its absence becomes clear. Think about the things that have become harder to force. Maybe you once tried to repair a connection again and again. Now, every attempt feels empty. Maybe you kept asking for one opportunity to work, yet each door returned you to the same question. Maybe you kept telling yourself that you could stay another year, but your heart keeps whispering that staying is no longer neutral. That whisper matters, not because every whisper must become immediate action, but because repeated inner resistance deserves honest attention. You have spent too long overriding yourself just to keep everyone else comfortable. The chosen one who is entering a new assignment must learn the difference between patience and paralysis. They are not the same. Patience has peace inside it. Paralysis has fear inside it. Patience can wait without losing identity. Paralysis keeps begging for more certainty because it believes one wrong move will destroy everything. If your waiting has become smaller, tighter, and more exhausting, then perhaps the question is no longer whether you can survive where you are. The question is whether you are still meant to remain there unchanged. Listen carefully to what I am saying. This is not permission to become impulsive. It is permission to become honest. There are decisions that require planning. There are responsibilities that deserve care. There are people who depend on you. Wisdom honors all of that. But wisdom also refuses to use responsibility as a mask for fear when God has been changing your direction for a long time. What once broke you now reveals you. That is the difference. Years ago, rejection made you question your worth. Now it makes you question alignment. Years ago, silence made you chase. Now it makes you observe. Years ago, delay made you panic. Now it makes you listen. You are not responding like the same person because you are not the same person. Do not turn that sensitivity into fear. It is not given so you can suspect everyone. It is given so you can stop abandoning your own discernment. The goal is not isolation. The goal is accuracy. A watchman does not scream at every shadow. A watchman learns which movement matters and which movement is only noise. That calm is important. Fear may still speak, but it is no longer the only voice. Something steadier has entered the room. You are beginning to understand that movement does not always mean running away. Sometimes, movement means refusing to return to the version of yourself that accepted less just to avoid being alone. This is where the generational cycle breaker begins to appear. You are not only choosing for this week, you are choosing what pattern receives permission to continue through your life. Every family has habits that feel normal because they are old. Silence can be old. People-pleasing can be old. Fear can be old. Staying too long can be old. But old does not mean sacred. Familiar does not mean assigned. Repeated does not mean permanent. There are moments when one person becomes the place where a pattern stops. That person often feels lonely before they feel powerful. They are misunderstood before they are respected. They are accused of changing because they finally stop repeating what everyone else called normal. Maybe that is why this season has felt isolating. You are not trying to become better than anyone. You are simply losing the ability to betray what you know. That can create distance. People who benefited from your silence may call your boundaries pride. People who benefited from your confusion may call your clarity selfishness. Do not let labels decide your direction. This is the pattern I want you to hold in your mind. The old environment feels heavier. Your attachment to it is weaker. Your tolerance for false peace is lower. Your desire for honest movement is stronger. You keep asking for one final sign, yet the evidence keeps arriving from different directions. Now remember something important. God is not the author of chaos. So if your next step requires wisdom, gather wisdom. If it requires planning, make a plan. If it affects people you love, move with care. Spiritual urgency does not cancel responsibility. Real discernment does not need recklessness to prove that it is real. But do not confuse careful movement with endless postponement. A door can remain open for years because you refuse to walk through it. A conversation can remain unfinished because you keep waiting for the perfect words. A preparation step can remain undone because you keep demanding emotional certainty before practical action. That is where delay becomes a habit. You have asked God to make you ready. What if readiness is already being built through small acts? Cleaning what you no longer need, saving what you can, organizing what has been neglected, ending conversations that keep reopening old wounds, learning what you need to learn, making room. These are not dramatic actions, but movement often begins quietly. This is why preparation matters. The final sign does not always come with a command to leap. Sometimes it comes with a command to prepare. Preparation is movement before movement becomes visible. It is the moment your inner agreement changes. You stop building your future around the assumption that everything must remain the same. There is a reason this reminds me of Abraham. He was called to leave what was familiar before he was given the complete picture of where the journey would lead. The call was clear enough for a step, but not detailed enough to remove every question. That matters, because many people think obedience only begins after certainty becomes complete. Abraham did not receive a full map before the journey began. He received direction. Then the road unfolded. That pattern is uncomfortable, because the human mind prefers guarantees. We want the destination, the timeline, the obstacles, and the outcome before we move. But faith often gives enough light for the next step, while leaving the full distance hidden. Do not copy Abraham by making reckless choices. Learn from the pattern. Direction can become clear before details become complete. You can know that something must change without knowing every detail of how the change will unfold. You can begin preparing before the final destination has a name. That is where some of you are right now. You know the old chapter is ending. You do not yet know the full shape of the next one. That middle space can feel terrifying. It can also feel sacred. You are standing between what no longer fits and what has not fully appeared. The temptation is to run backward, because backward is familiar. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar possibility. At least you know the rules of the old room. At least you know how people react there. At least you know how to survive there. The new place asks you to become someone who does not rely on those survival patterns anymore. That is why movement begins inside identity. Before you move locations, relationships, jobs, or assignments, something inside you has to stop calling the old prison home. You cannot carry every old agreement into a new season and expect the new season to feel new. Some things must end in your thinking before they end in your environment. Hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not being punished because the path took longer than you expected. Delay has taught you things speed could not teach. You learned who disappears when you stop overgiving. You learned which doors require you to become smaller. You learned how quickly fear can disguise itself as wisdom. The world often measures progress by visible movement. Heaven may measure it by what no longer controls you. There was a time when one message could pull you back into an old cycle. Now you can read it and breathe. There was a time when one criticism could destroy your peace. Now you can hear it and still know who you are. That is movement. There was a time when silence made you chase. Now silence gives you information. There was a time when loneliness made you return to places that hurt you. Now loneliness can sit beside you without becoming your master. These changes may look invisible, but they are preparing you for visible decisions. Chosen one, I need you to understand why this matters before we go deeper. If you only look for external signs, you will miss the transformation that made movement possible. A new door means nothing if the old identity still controls your choices. A new place means nothing if you recreate the same boundaries, fears, and patterns inside it. God is not only moving circumstances, He is moving you. He is changing what you tolerate. He is changing what you chase. He is changing what you call peace. He is changing how quickly you abandon yourself to keep a connection alive. That inner movement may be the first evidence that the next chapter has already started. You may ask, how do I know this is not just emotion? Good question. Emotion rises and falls quickly. A true pattern stays. It repeats across days, conversations, decisions, and seasons. It keeps returning after you rest. It remains after the anger fades. It becomes clearer when you are quiet, not only when you are upset. That is why you should not judge your direction in the middle of one emotional storm. Step back, look at the pattern. What has been repeating for months? What has become impossible to ignore? What truth returns when you are calm? What responsibility keeps calling your attention? What part of your life keeps asking for preparation? Those questions are not fear, they are discernment. And discernment becomes stronger when you stop demanding that every answer arrive with drama. Some answers come through repetition. Some come through exhaustion with the same cycle. Some come through a quiet loss of attachment. Some come through a new peace around an option that once terrified you. The final sign may be forming through all of those things at once. That is why you are here. Not to be pushed into chaos, but to be pulled out of denial. Not to be told to run blindly, but to recognize that movement has already started in the place nobody else can see. There is one more thing you need to notice. The people around you may not understand this shift because they are reading your life from the outside. They see the same house, the same job, the same face, the same routine. They do not see the conversations you have been having with God in private. They do not feel the weight that lifts when you imagine release. They do not feel the heaviness that returns when you imagine another year of the same pattern. They do not know how many times you asked for confirmation. They do not know how many nights you whispered, "If this season is over, please make it clear." So stop requiring everyone else to validate what only you have been carrying. Wise counsel matters. Mature advice matters. Responsibility matters. But your life cannot be governed by people who only know the surface of the decision. You can listen without surrendering your discernment. This is where courage becomes quiet. It is not shouting. It is not announcing your plans before they are ready. It is not proving anything. Quiet courage looks like preparation. It looks like boundaries. It looks like saving energy. It looks like finishing what needs to be finished without creating unnecessary war. That may be exactly what God is teaching you now. You do not have to destroy the old season to leave it. You do not have to hate people to outgrow an agreement. You do not have to create enemies to honor a new direction. You can move with peace. You can close a door without burning the entire house. And if this message is touching the pattern you have been living, mark this moment with one word: ready. Not because typing a word creates a miracle, but because naming readiness forces you to notice what your own heart has been avoiding. Let that word become a simple witness that you are willing to see the pattern clearly. Do not rush to prove anything after that. Just stay present. We are not finished. The next part matters because the first sign is not that a new door opened. The first sign is that the old room suddenly became impossible to live in the same way. And when God begins making the old place uncomfortable, it is not always rejection. Sometimes it is preparation. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is the slow removal of every reason you once used to stay. In the next part, you are going to understand why the old doors often close before the new road becomes visible. You will also see why certain people became distant at the exact moment you started becoming clearer. You will understand why your attachment weakened before your circumstances changed. And most importantly, you will see why heaven may begin removing your fallback options before revealing the full destination. Chosen one, hold your attention here. Do not confuse the discomfort of transition with the absence of direction. Something is moving. Something has already shifted. And before you understand where you are going, you need to understand why God made it harder to keep living where you have been. Chosen one, the old room became uncomfortable for a reason. You felt it before you understood it. The walls did not move, but something inside you did. And once your spirit begins to outgrow a season, comfort can start feeling like confinement, even when nothing outside looks obviously wrong. That is why this part matters so much. You are not being trained to fear change. You are being trained to recognize when peace has left an old pattern. The first movement often happens before the new road appears, and the tension comes because your heart can sense an ending that your circumstances have not fully revealed. You may have asked God to restore what was fading. You may have prayed for a connection to feel the way it once felt. You may have tried to repair a routine, revive an opportunity, or force enthusiasm back into a place that kept becoming quieter. Yet every attempt returned you to the same strange conclusion: something has changed. Do not judge yourself for noticing it. A chosen one often stays longer than necessary because loyalty is part of their nature. You remember the good years. You remember the people who once helped you. You remember the promises that were made. And because your heart honors history, you can confuse gratitude for the past with obligation to remain forever. But gratitude does not require permanent residence. Honor does not mean refusing growth. Love does not mean you must keep repeating an assignment after its purpose has been completed. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is acknowledge what a season gave you, bless what was good, and stop demanding that yesterday carry tomorrow. This is where the discomfort becomes information. The old place may still be familiar, but it no longer restores you. The same conversations keep circling. The same conflicts keep returning. The same promises keep being delayed. And somewhere beneath all of that repetition, you have started asking a different question. What if this is no longer mine to fix? That question can frighten a person who has built an identity around rescuing. You have been the one who stayed. You have been the one who explained. You have been the one who gave one more chance. But a watchman must eventually learn that standing at every gate is not obedience. Some gates close because your post has changed. That is not coldness. It is discernment becoming mature. Immature discernment reacts to everything. Mature discernment observes without needing to attack. It notices patterns. It respects evidence. It does not turn every disappointment into a prophecy, but it also refuses to ignore the same lesson after it has repeated enough times. So look at what has been repeating. Which door keeps closing despite your strongest effort? Which relationship only works when you abandon your boundaries? Which responsibility has become heavier because you are carrying what belongs to someone else? Which dream keeps returning after every attempt to bury it under practical reasons? Those questions are not designed to push you into a dramatic decision. They are designed to bring you back into honesty. The old season often becomes uncomfortable before it becomes impossible. And if you listen early, you can prepare with wisdom instead of waiting until pressure forces a choice you could have made with more peace. This is where many people misunderstand divine preparation. They think preparation always feels inspiring. Sometimes it feels like boredom with what once excited you. Sometimes it feels like losing interest in conversations that once consumed you. Sometimes it feels like a quiet refusal to keep performing a version of yourself that no longer feels true. And sometimes preparation looks like subtraction. Invitations disappear. Certain people stop calling. A plan stalls. A route becomes complicated. You may interpret every closing as failure because you were taught that progress must always look like addition. But removal can create the room that a new assignment needs before you even know what that assignment will be. Think about Moses. He spent years in a place that looked far removed from the future that would later define his life. Midian did not look like a throne room. It did not look like public influence. It looked quiet, repetitive, and hidden. Yet hidden seasons can become the place where old identities lose their power. Moses had known the palace. He had also known conflict. Then came a long stretch where the visible story seemed smaller. That does not mean every quiet season has the same purpose, but his pattern teaches something important. God can use distance to rebuild a person before sending that person back with a different kind of authority. You may be in your own version of that hidden space. It may not look impressive. Nobody may be applauding your growth. Your life may even seem slower from the outside. But inside, you are learning what you cannot learn when everyone has access to you. You are learning how to hear without the constant pressure of other voices. Isolation can be painful, but not every season of solitude is rejection. Some distance exposes dependence. Some silence reveals what noise was covering. Some endings show you how much of your identity was tied to being needed. And when those attachments begin to loosen, you can finally hear what your heart has been trying to say. You may notice that your mind becomes crowded when you are under constant pressure. You replay old conversations. You second-guess decisions. You start confusing urgency with importance. In moments like that, one of the most useful things you can build is a simple ritual that helps you become still before you make meaning from what you feel. This is where I want to share one tool without interrupting the message. Some people use a 7-minute listening practice called the Genius Song, created as an audio experience with sound patterns intended to support a focused state associated with gamma activity. The purpose is not to replace prayer, wisdom, sleep, medical care, or good decisions. It is simply a structured way to step away from noise, put on headphones, close your eyes, and give your attention one quiet place to settle. If that kind of practice supports you, use it as a tool, not as a source of identity. Your discernment still matters. Your responsibility still matters. Your faith still matters. A tool can help create a calmer moment, but it should never become the voice that decides your life for you. Then return to the deeper question. What has God been showing you through repetition? Not through one emotional day, not through one argument, not through one bad night. Through repetition, because repeated patterns often carry more information than sudden intensity, and the chosen one must learn the difference. There are 3 signs that often appear before a major movement becomes visible. I am not going to unpack all 3 yet. You need the full pattern, because any one sign by itself can be misunderstood, but when they begin appearing together, they create a picture that is much harder to dismiss. The first sign has to do with detachment. Not hatred, not bitterness, detachment. You stop needing a certain person to agree with you before you can breathe. You stop checking whether an old door has reopened every few hours. You still care, but the emotional hook is weakening. The second sign has to do with closure. Things that once stayed half open begin closing in ways you did not control. A conversation reaches its natural end. A repeated opportunity stops returning. A backup plan loses its appeal. You may not celebrate those closures at first, but later you notice how much energy they were consuming. The third sign is the most uncomfortable. It involves resistance. Right before movement becomes real, fear can become louder. Questions multiply. Old memories return. You may suddenly want a guarantee that no spiritual path can honestly give you. And that is where many people misread fear as a command to stay. We will return to all 3 signs in detail. For now, notice how they work together. Detachment loosens your grip. Closure removes old exits. Resistance exposes what still controls you. When these happen at the same time, the pressure can feel intense because your inner life is being separated from an old structure. This is why the old room became uncomfortable. It may not be because the room suddenly became evil. It may be because your assignment inside it is changing. There is a difference. If you label everything evil, you can become reactive. But if you recognize completion, you can leave with gratitude and carry less damage into the next chapter. Chosen one, completion is one of the hardest spiritual lessons. Beginnings are exciting, breakthroughs are celebrated, but completion requires maturity because it asks you to stop forcing life into something that has already given what it was meant to give. You have to release without needing the past to become terrible first. This may be the lesson your family never taught you. Many families know how to endure, but not how to release. They know how to stay. They know how to keep peace by swallowing truth. They know how to carry responsibilities far beyond what is healthy. And then they call that loyalty because nobody ever showed them another pattern. You may be the generational cycle breaker who learns a different kind of loyalty. Loyalty to truth, loyalty to peace, loyalty to the assignment God is actually giving you now. That does not erase your love for people. It simply means love is no longer allowed to demand self-abandonment as proof. But you are not that version anymore. You can feel it. Your body becomes tense when you start repeating the old performance. Your spirit becomes quiet when you betray what you know. And even if you cannot explain the entire future, you can sense that the old agreement is becoming harder to maintain. You were never meant to live in constant internal contradiction. Saying yes while your whole heart says no creates a cost. Staying in every room because someone might be disappointed creates a cost. Delaying every decision until everyone agrees creates a cost. Eventually, the bill appears as exhaustion, resentment, and loss of direction. That is why movement begins with clearing. Before the new assignment accelerates, there is often a season where God exposes what takes too much space. Old obligations, old fears, old emotional debts, old promises you made when you were a different person. Not everything can cross with you. The answer may surprise you. Many chosen ones are not exhausted because they are weak. They are exhausted because they have been faithful without boundaries. They keep answering every call. They keep fixing every crisis. They keep carrying what other adults refuse to carry. Then they wonder why their own assignment keeps getting delayed. This is part of the clearing season. God begins showing you where your attention leaks. He shows you the conversations that never produce growth. He shows you the habits that keep your mind scattered. He shows you the obligations you accepted from fear. And he begins asking whether you are willing to recover what you have been giving away. This is why certain connections become distant during transition. Distance reveals structure. If a relationship only survives when you overgive, the distance exposes that. If a connection can adapt to healthy boundaries, the distance can make it stronger. Either way, you receive information that constant closeness may have hidden. Moses learned something similar, in a different form. Distance from Egypt changed what Egypt meant to him. The palace was no longer the center of his identity. The old status no longer defined his future. By the time he was called back, he was not returning as the same man who had left. That is the hidden purpose of some seasons. God does not always remove you because the place has no value. Sometimes he removes you so the place loses control over your identity. Then if you return differently. And if you do not return, you carry the lesson without carrying the bondage. There is another reason the old place becomes uncomfortable. Comfort can become a substitute for calling. You can become so skilled at surviving a familiar environment that you stop asking whether it still requires your gifts. You know how to function there, so you assume you belong there. But competence is not always confirmation. You can be very good at a role you have already outgrown. You can solve problems that no longer deserve your life. You can keep receiving praise for a version of yourself that God is asking you to release. The applause can make departure harder. This is where the breakthrough prophet identity becomes important. A prophet does not only speak about what is coming, a prophet must also recognize when a season has ended. That recognition often appears before everyone else understands it, and that can make the person carrying it feel isolated. You may be seeing the ending before other people see it. That does not make you superior. It gives you responsibility. Your job is not to announce every conclusion. Your job is to prepare with humility. Pray. Observe. Gather facts. Make practical arrangements. Let clarity become stronger through consistency. Do not make public promises that your private discipline cannot support. If you believe movement is coming, prepare quietly. Reduce unnecessary debt. Organize important documents. Learn the skill. Make the call. Clean the space. Finish the commitment. Have the honest conversation. These actions turn spiritual language into responsible readiness. Preparation also protects you from false urgency. When your life is organized, you are less likely to make chaotic choices just because emotion spikes. You can move from conviction instead of panic. You can distinguish between a door opening and your desire to escape discomfort. That distinction will matter later. Remember it. Not every open door is your door. Not every closed door is rejection. Not every fear means stop. Not every excitement means go. Discernment is the ability to hold several signals together without letting one emotion become the entire message. This is why I told you there are 3 signs. You need the pattern, not one isolated feeling. Detachment, closure, resistance. Each one tells part of the story. Together, they reveal whether movement is becoming more than an idea. The first sign is already showing in some of you. You are less attached to outcomes that once controlled you. You can imagine a different life without immediately feeling guilty. You can imagine saying no without needing to write a 10-page defense. You can imagine being misunderstood and still remaining peaceful. The second sign is more visible. Certain fallback options are losing their power. Things you thought you could always return to no longer feel available. A backup relationship is no longer appealing. An old role no longer fits. A familiar escape no longer gives relief. This can feel scary because fallback options create an illusion of safety. The third sign will test that trust. Resistance often rises near commitment. The mind becomes creative when it wants to avoid uncertainty. It invents 10 future disasters before you have taken one practical step. It remembers every past failure. It compares your beginning to someone else at their peak. Then fear asks for another sign, and another, and another. That is the hidden loop we will confront later. because there is a point where asking for confirmation stops being discernment and starts becoming a way to delay responsibility. This is where God often begins removing the old reasons to stay, not to torment you, to make honesty easier. The environment becomes less comfortable. The distractions lose their appeal. The excuses sound weaker when you say them aloud, and the life you once defended begins feeling more like a place you are visiting. Pay attention to that feeling. Again, do not make it dramatic. Observe it. Does it remain after rest? Does it remain after conflict passes? Does it remain when you are calm? Does the same direction keep returning through prayer, practical evidence, trusted counsel, and your own growing clarity? If the answer keeps becoming yes, then preparation deserves your attention. You may not know the full destination. That is okay. You can still prepare your mind, your schedule, your finances, your relationships, and your habits for greater flexibility. This is how faith becomes grounded. It does not ignore reality. It works with reality. It does not pretend bills do not exist. It plans. It does not pretend people do not matter. It communicates. It does not pretend fear disappears overnight. It moves carefully while fear learns that uncertainty is survivable. Chosen one, your next chapter needs that version of you. Not a frantic version chasing signs, not a wounded version trying to prove something, a steady version, a prepared version. A person who can hear movement without turning movement into chaos. You have spent enough years responding to pressure. This season is teaching you to respond to alignment. Pressure says move now, or everything is ruined. Alignment says prepare, because the direction has become clearer. Pressure creates panic. Alignment creates focus. That difference is going to save you from two extremes. One extreme is paralysis, the other is impulsiveness. Both are reactions to fear. Discernment stands between them. It can move without rushing. It can wait without hiding. It can say not yet without turning. Not yet into never. This is the path you are learning. And it is why God may have made the old place uncomfortable before showing you the whole road. If the old place remained perfectly satisfying, you might never ask the deeper question. You might keep surviving beautifully in a chapter that had already finished its work. Discomfort awakened the question. Closure sharpened it. Detachment made it possible to answer. Resistance will reveal what still needs healing before the answer becomes action. That is the sequence. In the next part, we are going deeper into those three signs. You are going to see how detachment can happen without hatred, how closure can protect you from returning to expired cycles, and why fear often becomes loudest when movement is no longer theoretical. You will also meet the hidden blocker that keeps many strong people waiting long after they have enough information to prepare. It does not look like fear at first. It can look like wisdom. It can look like patience. It can even look spiritual. But when you recognize it, you will understand why you kept asking for one more confirmation. For now, remember this. The old room becoming uncomfortable is not the whole message. It is the beginning of the message. God is not asking you to despise where you have been. He is teaching you to recognize when gratitude has completed its work and movement must begin. Your next season does not need hatred as fuel. It needs clarity. It needs preparation. It needs boundaries. It needs a quieter mind. And above all, it needs the courage to stop asking the past to become comfortable enough for you to stay forever. Chosen one. The movement is already happening. You can see it in what no longer controls you. You can see it in the doors that stopped reopening. You can see it in the peace that appears when you imagine release. Now the question is not whether something has shifted. The question is what the pattern is preparing you to do next. Chosen one. Now we are entering the part where the pattern becomes harder to deny. You have already seen why the old place became uncomfortable. You have already felt certain doors closing. Now you need to understand the three signs that often appear when movement is no longer only an idea. The first sign is detachment. This does not mean hatred. It does not mean anger. It means something that once controlled your emotional world begins losing its grip. You still remember it. You may still care. But the need to force an outcome is becoming weaker, and that change is more important than it first appears. There was a time when one message could change your entire day. One silence could send your mind searching for answers. One delayed response could make you question everything. Now you notice something different. You can feel the uncertainty without automatically chasing it, and you can let unanswered questions remain unanswered for a little longer. That is not indifference. It is emotional freedom beginning to form. The old attachment was often built around the belief that peace could only arrive after someone else acted differently. You needed the apology. You needed the answer. You needed the opportunity. You needed the door to reopen. Now your peace is becoming less dependent on those conditions. This is why detachment can feel confusing at first. You may wonder whether you have become cold. You have not. You may wonder whether you stopped caring. That is not necessarily true either. You may simply be discovering that love and attachment are not the same thing, and that caring for someone does not require surrendering your inner stability. A chosen one often learns this lesson late because your instinct is to remain available. You notice pain in other people. You sense what they are not saying. You try to understand their wounds before judging their behavior. That compassion is beautiful, but compassion without discernment can keep you tied to patterns that never ask the other person to grow. This is where the watchman must become wiser. You can see someone clearly and still step back. You can understand their pain and still refuse harmful repetition. You can forgive without reopening every door. You can wish someone peace without volunteering to become the place where their unresolved chaos is deposited again. Detachment says, I do not need to hate you to release you. Detachment says, I do not need to prove you wrong to choose differently. Detachment says, I can honor what was real without pretending everything should continue. That kind of release creates room for movement because your future is no longer waiting for the past to cooperate. Look at your own life carefully. What outcome has stopped controlling you as strongly as before? Which person once occupied hours of your thoughts, but now appears less often in your mind? Which old dream can you release without feeling like your identity disappears with it? These changes may be signs that clearing has already begun. The second sign is closure. This sign usually feels more external. Doors stop reopening. Conversations reach an end. Opportunities that used to return no longer come back. The places you once considered backup plans begin losing access to you, and suddenly the future looks more open and more frightening at the same time. Closure can feel cruel when you do not understand its purpose. Human nature loves backup plans. We like knowing that if the new road becomes difficult, the old road still exists. We tell ourselves that we are being practical. Sometimes we are, but sometimes a fallback option keeps part of our heart emotionally committed to a season that has already ended. This is why some doors remain closed, even after you become stronger. You may think strength should restore everything, but sometimes strength reveals why restoration is not the goal. You were not healed so you could return to every place that hurt you. Some healing exists so you can recognize why you no longer need the old room at all. Think about Ruth. Her life was interrupted by loss, uncertainty, and a future she could not fully predict. The path behind her carried familiarity, but familiarity was not the same as destiny. She reached a point where remaining attached to what had ended could not produce the life that was still waiting ahead. Ruth did not know every detail of what would come next. She could not see the entire story from the road where she stood. She had a direction, a relationship of trust, and a willingness to move beyond the life that had already been broken open. That was enough to begin. Her movement is important because it was not driven by hatred. She was not running from the past with revenge in her heart. She was moving toward commitment. She carried grief, but grief did not become her permanent address. She carried uncertainty, But uncertainty did not receive the authority to cancel every next step. That is the distinction you need. You do not need perfect emotional conditions before you begin preparing. You can carry unanswered questions and still organize your life. You can feel sadness and still accept closure. You can miss what was and still recognize that returning would recreate a pattern God has been teaching you to outgrow. Closure often protects the decision you have not yet become strong enough to make. That is why you may suddenly lose access to things you once used whenever fear became intense. The old conversation no longer works. The old escape no longer comforts you. The old version of yourself no longer knows how to pretend everything is fine. At first you may call this loss. Later you may call it mercy. Some doors close because you would keep entering them every time uncertainty became uncomfortable. And if every retreat remained easy, you might never discover the strength required to continue forward when the next chapter feels unfamiliar. This does not mean every closed door came directly from God. Life contains human choices, timing, consequences, and circumstances. But a mature chosen one looks at the entire pattern without turning every event into a supernatural command. You observe what repeats, what aligns with wisdom, and what becomes clearer when emotion settles. That is discernment. It is not superstition. It is not panic. It is the disciplined ability to notice what continues to be true after the emotional noise fades. The stronger your discernment becomes, the less you need dramatic signs, because you can recognize consistent patterns without demanding spectacle. There is a third sign. This one often appears just as you begin accepting the first two. Resistance. The closer movement gets to becoming practical, the louder fear can become. The idea of change felt inspiring when it was distant, but when you begin imagining the actual conversation, actual preparation, or actual departure, suddenly every possible danger demands attention. This is where many people turn around. They interpret fear as proof that the direction must be wrong. But fear can rise for many reasons. Sometimes it warns you about a real danger. Sometimes it simply reacts because the familiar identity is losing control. Your job is not to obey fear or reject fear automatically. Your job is to examine it. Ask the fear what it is protecting. Is there a practical risk that deserves a plan? Then make the plan. Is there a responsibility you have ignored? Then handle it. Is the fear only repeating that anything unfamiliar must be dangerous? Then you may be dealing with an old survival pattern rather than a present warning. That distinction is powerful. Fear becomes easier to understand when you separate information from imagination. Information says you need enough money for the transition. Imagination says one uncertain step will destroy your entire future. Information says a conversation may be difficult. Imagination says everyone will abandon you forever. A demonstrated warrior of light does not prove courage by pretending fear is absent. Courage listens, separates fact from story, and acts according to what remains true. That is a different kind of strength. It does not need noise. It does not need applause. It needs honesty. Now place the three signs together. Detachment weakens the emotional chain. Closure reduces access to expired options. Resistance reveals the fears still attached to movement. One sign alone may mean very little. But when all three begin appearing around the same season, you should pay attention to the larger picture. Perhaps you are experiencing exactly that. You do not feel the same attachment anymore. Certain doors have closed without your permission. And every time you consider a new direction, fear becomes louder. You may think these forces contradict each other. They may actually be revealing the same transition from different angles. This is why the movement has already started. It did not begin when you packed a bag. It did not begin when you changed an address. It did not begin when everyone around you noticed. It began when the old emotional agreements started breaking, and when your inner world stopped organizing itself around the assumption that nothing could change. That is a form of movement nobody can take from you. External circumstances can delay, people can misunderstand, plans can require revision. But once you clearly recognize a cycle, you cannot truly become unaware of it again. You may revisit it, you may struggle. Yet some part of you will remember what you saw. Chosen one, this is why you have felt more observant lately. You are noticing who respects your boundaries without punishment. You are noticing which opportunities require you to betray your values. You are noticing which rooms make you shrink. You are noticing where your peace expands without needing anyone to perform for you. That awareness is not given so you can judge everyone. It is given so you can choose differently. Spiritual maturity is not about discovering enemies everywhere. It is about becoming honest enough to stop calling every familiar pattern safe just because you know how to survive it. Some of you have survived environments for so long that you mistake endurance for belonging. You know exactly how to read the room. You know when to become quiet. You know which truth will create conflict. You know how to keep everyone calm. But becoming excellent at survival does not mean the environment deserves another decade of your life. You were made for more than managing tension. You were made to build. You were made to create. You were made to serve from overflow instead of permanent depletion. And the breakthrough prophet in you must recognize that a gift used only to survive cannot fully become the gift that leads you into your assignment. Maybe that is why your patience feels different now. You can still wait, but you no longer want to waste time. You can still forgive, but you no longer want to volunteer for the same wound. You can still care, but you no longer want to confuse care with endless access. This change may upset people who knew the old version of you. They may say, "You have changed." They are right. Growth changes access. Growth changes tolerance. Growth changes the questions you ask before committing your time. That does not make you better than them. It means your responsibility to your own life is becoming clearer. If someone you care about is living through this same kind of transition, share this message with them. Not to pressure them into a decision. Share it because many strong people suffer quietly when they cannot name the pattern they are experiencing. Sometimes one clear message helps a person stop confusing transformation with failure. And then return your attention to yourself. There is still another layer we have not touched. You understand detachment. You understand closure. You understand resistance. But there is a hidden blocker beneath these signs, and it can keep a powerful person waiting long after the season has already provided enough information for preparation. Before we uncover it, notice how many times you have asked for certainty. Maybe you told God that you would move if one particular thing happened. Then it happened, and you created another condition. You asked for peace. Peace came briefly. Then you asked for a second confirmation, because the first one did not remove every possible fear. You asked for an opportunity. An opportunity appeared. Then you worried that it was too early. You asked for closure. Closure arrived. Then you worried that you had misunderstood it. You asked for distance. Distance appeared. Then you began missing what the distance was designed to reveal. This does not make you weak. It means the mind has learned a powerful survival strategy. If certainty never becomes complete, then commitment can always be postponed. And if commitment is postponed, you never have to face the vulnerability of choosing a road that cannot offer every guarantee. There it is. The hidden blocker is beginning to show itself. It is not simply fear of movement. It is the belief that you should not move until uncertainty disappears. That belief sounds reasonable. It can even sound wise. But no meaningful transition can remove every unknown before the first step. You use certainty as a shield. You call it patience. You call it waiting for perfect timing. You call it being responsible. Sometimes those words are accurate, but other times they protect you from the one thing you do not want to admit. You already know enough to begin preparing, but preparation would make the possibility real. That is why small preparation steps can trigger such strong emotion. You clean one drawer and suddenly feel sadness. You update one document and suddenly imagine the future. You save one amount of money and suddenly realize that departure is no longer only a fantasy. Preparation converts possibility into evidence. This is why the mind sometimes avoids simple tasks. It is not the task itself. It is what the task represents. A packed box says this chapter might actually close. A completed application says you might actually be chosen. A boundary says the relationship may never return to its old shape. And yet, you cannot enter accelerated fulfillment while demanding that nothing familiar be disturbed. Growth changes arrangement. A new assignment changes your calendar. A stronger boundary changes relationships. A different future changes what receives your attention. Movement requires space, and space often appears because something else no longer occupies it. Remember the quiet listening practice mentioned earlier. If you choose to use a focus tool like that, let it support stillness before decisions, not replace discernment. The purpose of any useful routine is to help reduce noise enough for you to think clearly, pray honestly, and return to the practical evidence already present in your life. Now forget the tool for a moment. Come back to the message. Because something far more important is happening here. You have been interpreting your fear as proof that you are not ready. What if fear is simply revealing the exact place where your old identity expects certainty before it allows obedience? This is the moment I need your full attention. The greatest threat to your next chapter may not be an enemy outside you. It may be your habit of requiring complete certainty before taking a responsible first step. That habit can look safe for years, while quietly turning delay into a permanent lifestyle. Read that pattern again inside yourself. You do not need another dramatic event every time fear returns. Fear returning does not erase yesterday's clarity. One difficult morning does not cancel months of evidence. One lonely night does not automatically mean the old relationship should reopen. The warrior of light learns emotional continuity. You remember what was true before the current emotion arrived. If you established a boundary after months of thought, 1 hour of loneliness should not erase it. If you made a careful plan from clear evidence, one wave of fear should not destroy the entire plan. This is why journaling, prayer, and written preparation can become useful. Not because paper is magical. It is useful because fear changes memory. When emotion becomes intense, you can forget how clear you felt 3 days earlier. A written record helps you remember the pattern, instead of allowing one moment to rewrite the whole story. Write down what has repeated. Write down what changed. Write down which doors closed. Write down which attachments weakened. Write down what trusted wisdom confirmed. Then read your own record when fear begins demanding a completely new sign. You may discover something surprising. The answer has been more consistent than your emotions. The pattern has been more stable than your confidence. Your confidence rises and falls, but the direction keeps returning. That difference matters. This is how the hidden blocker loses power. Not through force, through evidence. You stop demanding a feeling of perfect certainty. You begin asking whether the next step is wise, responsible, aligned, and supported by the larger pattern. Those are better questions because they can guide action without pretending the future is fully controllable. There is a false summit here. Many people think the only missing ingredient is courage. They tell themselves that one day they will finally feel brave enough. Then they will act. But courage is not always the real issue. Sometimes you already have courage. What you lack is permission to act without total certainty. You have been trained to believe that a correct decision should feel completely peaceful. That is not always true. A correct decision can carry grief. It can carry responsibility. It can carry fear. Peace may exist deeper than those emotions, but the surface can still be turbulent while you are making a meaningful transition. Think about Ruth again. The road forward did not erase what she had lost. She could carry sorrow and direction at the same time. One emotion did not have to cancel the other. That is maturity. You can miss a person and still know the relationship cannot return to the same pattern. You can feel nervous and still know preparation is wise. You can feel sad about leaving a role and still know the role no longer fits. You can honor the years you invested and still refuse to invest the next 10 years only because the previous 10 already happened. That is another trap. Past investment can become a chain. You think leaving means everything was wasted. It does not. A completed season can still be valuable. A relationship can teach you without lasting forever. A job can develop skills without becoming your final assignment. You are allowed to receive the lesson without remaining in the classroom forever. You are allowed to thank the season and continue. You are allowed to recognize that something served its purpose, even if the ending was imperfect. This is the clearing stage becoming visible. Old emotional debts begin losing authority. Old stories become easier to examine. You stop building identity around who left, who rejected you, who underestimated you, or who failed to understand you. Those experiences remain part of your story, but they stop being the author of your next chapter. Then something beautiful begins. Energy returns to the future. The attention you spent replaying the past becomes available for building. The time you spent defending yourself becomes available for preparation. The emotional space occupied by old arguments becomes available for imagination. That is accelerated fulfillment at its earliest stage. It does not mean everything suddenly happens overnight. It means your energy is no longer divided between two directions. You stop saying that you want the new while secretly arranging your entire life around returning to the old. Alignment creates speed because divided loyalty creates friction. When your heart, habits, boundaries, and preparation begin pointing in one direction, momentum becomes easier to recognize. You are not forcing destiny. You are simply reducing the contradictions that kept draining your movement. This is where some people around you may become uncomfortable. They were accustomed to your hesitation. Your uncertainty made you predictable. Your constant explanations gave them influence. When you become calmer, they may increase pressure because the old methods no longer receive the same reaction. Do not become arrogant when that happens. Stay grounded. A boundary does not need an insult. A decision does not need a villain. You do not have to demonize people to move forward. Sometimes, two paths simply stop traveling in the same direction. But if manipulation appears, recognize it. If someone only respects you when you obey them, that is information. If they only become kind when they fear losing access, that is information. If your boundary produces punishment instead of conversation, that is information. Information is valuable because it reduces confusion. You do not need to turn information into hatred. You use it to make wiser decisions. That is what a mature watchman does. You watch patterns without allowing resentment to poison your vision. Chosen one. There is another tribe marker you may recognize. Your dreams may have become more vivid. Roads, doors, trains, cars, bridges, luggage, houses you are leaving, rooms you cannot return to. Do not build your life on a dream alone, but notice whether the imagery mirrors a waking pattern that already exists. You may also notice repeating reminders throughout ordinary life. A conversation about relocation, a stranger mentioning the same city, a job opportunity appearing in the same field, a lesson returning through different people. Again, do not turn every detail into a supernatural code. Look for consistency, not obsession. The point is not to become addicted to signs. The point is to become less dependent on them. If every small coincidence controls your decision, you have not gained discernment. You have simply replaced one form of uncertainty with another. Mature faith can receive confirmation without becoming enslaved to constant interpretation. The final sign will make sense because it gathers the larger pattern. It will not require you to chase every number, every dream, or every passing thought. It will reveal what has already been forming through detachment, closure, resistance, repeated direction, and the quiet collapse of your need to return. We are getting close to that revelation now. But first you need to see what happens when certainty becomes an addiction. Every confirmation gives temporary relief. Then fear returns. So you ask for another confirmation. Relief comes again. Then fear returns again. That cycle can continue for years. The problem is not lack of information. The problem is that you are using information to regulate fear instead of using information to make a decision. No amount of confirmation can permanently satisfy a mind that has decided uncertainty must disappear before action becomes safe. This is why one more sign never feels like enough. You believe the next sign will remove the fear. It does not. It only quiets fear briefly. Then the mind invents a new question. What if I misunderstood? What if the timing is wrong? What if the door closes after I move? Those questions are not evil. Some deserve practical answers. But when every answer produces another condition, you need to recognize the pattern. You are no longer gathering wisdom. You are negotiating with uncertainty. And uncertainty will never promise what you want. It cannot tell you exactly how every person will respond. It cannot guarantee that every plan will work on the first attempt. It cannot tell you that you will never feel lonely, tired, or afraid. Life does not offer that contract. Faith does not offer that contract either. Faith gives direction without pretending you control every outcome. Wisdom gives preparation without promising there will be no surprises. Courage gives movement without demanding that fear disappear first. This is why your final sign cannot simply be another isolated confirmation. If it were, you could use it exactly like every previous one. You would feel relief. Then fear would return. Then you would ask again. The final sign has to expose the pattern itself. And that is what has been happening. God has been teaching you to recognize convergence. Several things are beginning to point in one direction at the same time. Your attachment is weaker. Your fallback doors are fewer. Your desire for movement is stronger. Your fear becomes louder because the possibility is becoming real. The old place does not fit the same way. Your ability to pretend is shrinking. Your boundaries are strengthening. Your questions are changing. Even your prayers are changing. You are no longer only asking God to fix the old season. Somewhere inside, you have started asking Him to prepare you for what comes after it. That prayer matters. You may not have noticed when it changed. At first you prayed, "Restore this." Then you prayed, "Show me what this means." Then you prayed, "Give me strength." Now part of you is praying, "Help me release what I cannot carry forward." That is movement. Quiet movement. Invisible movement, but movement. And if you can recognize that, then you are ready for what comes next. Because the final revelation is not about convincing you to abandon your life overnight. It is about showing you why the same direction has been repeating through different areas of your life. In the next part, we will reach the false summit. You may think you simply need more courage. Then you will see the deeper truth. The hidden blocker was never only fear. It was your dependence on certainty before movement. Then the core loop will finally close. You will understand what the final sign actually is. You will understand what move can mean without turning it into reckless escape. And you will see why Abraham, Ruth, Moses, and Joshua all reveal different parts of the same spiritual pattern. Until then, hold these three signs together. Detachment, closure, resistance. Do not worship them, do not fear them. Observe them, test them. Place them beside the practical facts of your life. If they have been repeating for months, do not erase them because of one emotional night. If wise preparation keeps appearing as the next responsible step, stop demanding a guarantee before you begin preparing. You do not need to know the entire road to organize what the next step requires. Chosen one, you are closer than you think. The movement has already started inside your identity. The old cycle is losing authority. The fallback doors are becoming less attractive. The fear is revealing exactly where certainty once controlled you. Now you are approaching the moment when all of these pieces will converge. And when they do, you may realize something that changes the way you interpret this entire season. You were not waiting for movement to begin. You were already moving long before anyone else could see it. Chosen one, you have reached the point where the pieces finally come together. Detachment was not the whole sign. Closure was not the whole sign. Resistance was not the whole sign. Each one was preparing you to recognize something larger, because the final sign was never meant to arrive as one isolated moment. You thought courage was the missing piece. You believed that if you could become brave enough, everything would finally move. So you prayed for courage. You listened for encouragement. You waited for the day when fear would disappear and confidence would replace it completely. But that day kept refusing to arrive. Here is why. Courage was never your deepest problem. You have already survived things that required enormous courage. You have walked through rejection. You have endured seasons nobody around you fully understood. You have rebuilt yourself quietly, while other people assumed you were standing still. A person without courage could not have reached this moment. Something else has been keeping you at the edge. It has been quieter than fear, and because it often sounds responsible, you rarely questioned it. You have been waiting for certainty before giving yourself permission to move. You wanted to know the outcome first. You wanted to know who would stay. You wanted to know whether the new road would work. You wanted to know whether you would regret leaving the old chapter. And because nobody could answer those questions completely, you kept creating another reason to wait. That is the false summit. You believed your breakthrough would happen when fear disappeared. But the deeper breakthrough happens when you realize fear does not need to disappear before a wise step becomes possible. You do not need emotional perfection. You need enough clarity to prepare responsibly. Now look backward for a moment. The old place became uncomfortable. You tried to restore your old enthusiasm, but it did not return. Relationships changed. Certain doors stopped opening. Your attachment weakened. Your boundaries became stronger. The same direction continued appearing through different areas of your life. Then resistance increased. You began imagining everything that might go wrong. You asked for another sign. Relief came whenever something confirmed your direction, but the relief never lasted. Soon you were asking again. That was not because heaven stopped speaking. It was because certainty had become the standard you demanded before acting. Chosen one, this is the revelation. The final sign is not another message appearing tomorrow. It is the convergence of everything you have already been living. The old place no longer fits. The fallback doors keep closing. Your attachment keeps weakening. Resistance keeps rising. And the same direction keeps returning. You were waiting for one event. God allowed a pattern. You were waiting for one voice. Your entire season began speaking. You were waiting for something impossible to misunderstand, while your life kept repeating the same lesson through endings, boundaries, desires, discomfort, preparation, and quiet inner change. This is your final sign, not because nothing else will ever happen, not because God will never guide you again. It is final because you already have enough evidence to stop pretending that nothing has changed. Another confirmation cannot do the work that only a decision can now begin. Hear this carefully. Move does not automatically mean leave your house tonight. It does not automatically mean quit your work tomorrow. It does not automatically mean end a relationship without conversation. Movement must be interpreted through wisdom, responsibility, prayer, practical facts, and the actual circumstances of your life. For one person, move means preparing for relocation. For another, it means finally submitting the application. For someone else, movement means closing an emotional cycle that has occupied years. Another person may need to stop postponing a conversation, create a boundary, begin learning, or accept an assignment they have avoided. Movement can be physical, it can be relational, it can be financial, It can be vocational. It can be spiritual. The common thread is not dramatic escape. The common thread is that you stop organizing your future around the assumption that the old pattern must remain unchanged. That is the difference between running from pain and moving with purpose. Running from pain wants immediate relief. Purpose can prepare patiently. Running destroys everything behind it because anger needs evidence. Purpose can leave with gratitude. Running refuses planning. Purpose respects responsibility. So when you hear the word run, do not hear panic. Hear urgency without chaos. Hear the instruction to stop sleeping through a transition that has already begun. Run from the pattern that keeps making you smaller. Run from endless postponement. Run from the belief that one more sign will finally remove every unknown. You do not need to attack the past. You need to stop building your future inside it. The generational cycle breaker does not become free by spending another decade proving who was wrong. Freedom comes when the pattern loses permission to continue through you. This is why your family may not immediately understand. They may have inherited the same rule you are breaking. Stay because leaving feels dangerous. Stay because people will talk. Stay because uncertainty is irresponsible. Stay because familiarity is safer than possibility. Those beliefs can travel through generations without anyone ever naming them. Then one person becomes conscious of the pattern. One person asks whether survival is the same as living. One person realizes that keeping everyone comfortable has quietly required self-abandonment. One person decides that fear will no longer be passed forward as wisdom. That person may be you, not because you are superior, because you became aware. Awareness creates responsibility. Once you can see the cycle, repeating it unconsciously becomes harder. You begin noticing the moment when old family fear enters your decisions, wearing the clothes of common sense. This does not mean rejecting your family. It means separating inherited fear from mature wisdom. Mature wisdom prepares. Mature wisdom gathers information. Mature wisdom respects commitments. But mature wisdom does not demand a guarantee that no human being can ever receive. Think about Joshua standing before the Jordan. The river existed. The uncertainty existed. The responsibility was enormous. The people could not remain in endless preparation forever. There came a moment when what had been promised, prepared, and repeated had to become movement. The water did not need to disappear from the story before movement mattered. The challenge itself became part of the crossing. That image carries a lesson for you. Some clarity appears only after a responsible step begins. You cannot demand evidence from the other side while refusing to approach the river. You have spent enough time studying the river. You know where it is. You know why it scares you. You know what staying has been costing you. The next question is smaller and more practical. What is the next wise step that moves you toward alignment without abandoning responsibility? Maybe it is one phone call. Maybe it is research. Maybe it is saving money. Maybe it is updating documents. Maybe it is ending access to a pattern that repeatedly harms your peace. Maybe it is finally admitting that the plan you keep calling temporary has already consumed years. Do not despise small steps. Small steps expose false certainty because they make you act without demanding the whole road. You do not need to cross an entire future tonight. You need to stop using the size of the future as an excuse to avoid the next responsible action. This is where the final sign becomes liberating. You can stop hunting. You can stop interpreting every passing detail. You can stop waking up asking whether today will contain another dramatic confirmation. The pattern has already spoken loudly enough for preparation. The old place no longer fits. That is one piece. The old fallback options keep losing power. That is another. Your attachment has weakened. Your boundaries have strengthened. Fear becomes louder when movement becomes real. The same direction keeps returning after emotion settles. Now place all of those pieces together. What do they say? They say the transition is already underway. Your external life may still look similar, but your internal agreement with the old season has changed. You are not waiting for the transition to begin. You are deciding whether you will cooperate with what has already begun. That is why your prayers have changed. You once asked God to restore everything, then you asked Him to explain everything, then you asked Him to protect you from change. Now, you are beginning to ask for strength to carry the next assignment well. Your prayer changed because your identity changed. The watchman in you sees more clearly. The warrior of light no longer needs every shadow to disappear. The breakthrough prophet recognizes completion. The generational cycle breaker understands that freedom must become a pattern, not merely a moment. This is the place where you stop bargaining with the past. You do not need one final apology. You do not need one final person to understand. You do not need one final opportunity to prove your value. Your worth is not waiting behind any closed door. You can leave an unanswered question unanswered. You can bless a season without reopening it. You can admit that something mattered and still accept that its work is finished. Completion does not erase value. It simply removes the requirement that value must continue forever. Chosen one, feel the weight of that. You have been carrying unfinished stories because you thought every story needed a perfect ending before you could move forward. Some stories end with understanding. Some end with silence. Some end because you finally stop returning for an answer that another person cannot give. And when you stop returning, your energy comes home. Your attention comes home. Your imagination comes home. Suddenly the future has space again. That is what clearing was preparing. This is why the resistance became so loud. The old identity sensed that its authority was ending. The people-pleaser could no longer guarantee belonging. The rescuer could no longer guarantee importance. The version of you built around being needed had to face a terrifying possibility. Who are you when nobody needs saving? Who are you when the old conflict no longer defines your day? Who are you when you stop measuring love by sacrifice? Those questions can feel empty at first, but the emptiness is space. Space is not failure. Space is capacity. The clearing creates room for what could not enter, while your life was crowded with old emotional obligations. You called it emptiness because you had not yet seen what the room could become. This is where accelerated fulfillment begins, not through magic, through alignment. Your attention is no longer divided between building the new and constantly repairing the old. Your decisions become cleaner. Your boundaries require fewer explanations. Your energy begins serving direction instead of defense. And that is why you cannot carry the old identity forward unchanged. If you enter a new place, still needing everybody to approve of you, you will rebuild the old prison with new people. If you enter a new relationship without boundaries, the names will change, but the pattern may survive. If you begin a new assignment while remaining addicted to certainty, you will delay inside the new chapter, exactly as you delayed inside the old one. The location may change while the cycle remains. That is not the freedom you have been preparing for. Real movement includes identity. You do not merely leave something, you become someone who no longer needs to recreate it. That is the deeper crossing. So let the truth become simple now. Why did the old place become uncomfortable? Because staying unchanged was becoming impossible. What were the three signs? Detachment, closure, and resistance. What was the hidden blocker? Your demand for complete certainty. And what is the final sign? It is the convergence of a completed season, reduced attachment, repeated closure, increased resistance, and a direction that continues returning after the emotional noise becomes quiet. Who is this message for? It is for the chosen one, who already knows something must change, but keeps demanding one more dramatic confirmation. It is for the watchman, who can read everyone except themselves. It is for the cycle breaker, who has confused endurance with destiny. You do not need more panic, you need clarity. You do not need more pressure, you need preparation. You do not need to abandon wisdom, You need to stop using wisdom as a disguise for permanent delay. That closes the question you entered with. You are not waiting for the final sign. You have been living inside it. Now there is one practical bridge I promised to return to. Earlier, I mentioned a short listening practice because some of you are not lacking spiritual desire. You are struggling to create enough mental quiet to separate repeated direction from constant internal noise. This matters because a scattered mind can turn one simple decision into 20 competing possibilities. You start with one clear thought. Then old memories arrive. Other opinions enter. Fear predicts 10 futures. By the end, the original clarity has disappeared under mental traffic. A chosen one does not need another identity label at that moment. You may need a repeatable space where attention can settle. That is why the tool mentioned earlier fits this message. It is not meant to decide your future. It is meant to support the mental state from which clearer decisions may become easier. Consider one story described in the materials behind this audio. A 47-year-old manager at a financial company used the practice for 18 days and reported no obvious transformation. By day 20, she was close to requesting her money back because nothing dramatic seemed to be happening. She continued for another 2 weeks, mostly from curiosity. On day 34, she noticed the change had been quieter than she expected. A work decision that previously kept her stuck had already been made with less hesitation, and she also reported sleeping more deeply during that period. There was no dramatic moment. That is what makes the story useful here. Sometimes, change becomes visible only after repetition has already changed the way you respond. The lesson is not that every person receives the same result or timeline. The lesson is that subtle progress can be easy to miss when you are expecting spectacle. That connects directly to your spiritual pattern. You kept expecting one enormous sign. Meanwhile, your responses were changing quietly. The same principle can appear in mental routines. If you only count dramatic experiences, you may overlook the small changes that eventually shape a decision. Dr. Robert Lake developed the approach behind this audio over 34 years, according to the product materials. The method is built around auditory brain entrainment, intended to encourage activity associated with gamma patterns. The creators also connect the concept with gamma research from institutions, including the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Princeton, and other leading research universities. That does not mean a 7-minute audio replaces prayer, sleep, wise counsel, medical care, or responsible planning. It does not. The value proposition is much narrower. It gives you a structured listening period designed to reduce the effort required to enter a focused routine. You may be thinking that you have already tried meditation, healing sounds, visualization, or other practices. That hesitation is reasonable. The creators distinguish this method by focusing on externally delivered audio patterns rather than asking you to generate the entire state through mental effort alone. You may also think the idea sounds almost too simple. 7 minutes feels small compared with the size of what you are carrying. But simplicity is part of the design. A routine is only useful if you can repeat it, and a short practice is easier to place inside a real life filled with responsibilities. The tool is called the Genius Song. It is a 7-minute digital audio designed by Dr. Lake around that gamma-focused entrainment approach. If you use it, stereo headphones or earbuds are important because the method depends on different audio information reaching each ear. Sit upright somewhere quiet. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable. Give the full 7 minutes to the session without reading, working, driving, or checking your phone. The product instructions recommend 1 session per day because consistency matters more than trying to force a stronger experience. Now let us address the obvious question. Why pay for an audio when you can find free sounds everywhere? Because the offer is not being positioned as ordinary background music. The value is in the specific protocol, the work attributed to Dr. Lake, the structured delivery, and the supporting materials included with it. Other wellness options can become expensive over time. A meditation app may cost around $15 each month. A single professional therapy session can be around $150 in some settings. Retreats can reach several $100s. Those may be valuable for different reasons, but they are not built specifically around this gamma-focused audio approach. The original listed price for the core audio is $49. Through the access offered with this video, the price is $39 as a one-time payment. According to the product materials, Dr. Lake framed that lower access point around making the method available to people who would actually use it consistently. And the $39 does not only include the core audio. 4 additional resources are included. Genius Child carries a listed value of $19. The Classic Book Resource carries a value of $20. A guided visualization is listed at $29. A 5-habit infographic is valued at $12. Together, those 4 bonuses represent $80 in stated bonus value. That comes alongside the core technology and the listening protocol for the $39 access price. There is also a 90-day guarantee. If you use the program and decide it is not right for you, the offer states that you can request a full refund without conditions. Because the materials are digital, there is nothing physical to return. Here is the unusual part. The guarantee states that you can keep all 4 bonuses even after receiving the refund. That is presented as recognition of the time you invested in giving the practice a fair opportunity, rather than making you return every resource simply because the main audio was not right for you. The product materials report that 18,366 people have used the program. They also report a refund rate below 4%, meaning more than 96% kept access. Those figures come from the creators of the offer, and individual experiences can still differ. Do not turn those numbers into a promise about yourself. Your outcome is your outcome. The reason I am telling you the details is so you can make a decision from information rather than hype. And this brings us back to the message. Your biggest cost has not always been choosing the wrong tool. Sometimes it has been endless delay. You keep waiting for a perfect mental state before building a practice that might help you create a quieter one. There is no fake deadline here. The urgency is personal. Every week spent repeating the same scattered routine is another week where the same decisions must fight through the same noise. If you already know that a simple daily structure would support your focus, postponing that structure does not create greater certainty. One warning matters. The creators state that authentic access comes through the official link connected to this video. They specifically warn against copies presented through marketplaces or free audio platforms. If you decide to explore it, use only the link in the description or the pinned comment so you reach the intended version. Do not rush because I mentioned it. Do not act from fear. Make the same kind of decision this entire message has been teaching you to make. Look at the information. Look at your needs. Look at what you can responsibly afford. Then decide without asking another person to manufacture certainty for you. If this tool fits your situation, the official access to the Genius Song is waiting through the description or pinned comment. If it does not fit, keep the principle and continue the journey. Build a quiet practice. Protect your attention. Give your mind enough space to hear what your deeper discernment has already been repeating. Because the product is not the final sign. The link is not the final sign. No audio can choose your assignment for you. The final sign was the pattern that brought you to this moment, and the next chapter still requires your participation. You already know what has become too heavy to keep carrying. You already know which fallback door keeps calling you backward. You already know which fear keeps demanding guarantees. Now you know why another sign cannot solve what only movement will reveal. The river is still there, the future is still partly hidden, but you are not the person who first arrived at the edge. You have been prepared through detachment. You have been strengthened through closure. You have been exposed through resistance. Now preparation becomes obedience, not reckless action, not emotional escape, responsible movement. And when you move, do not carry the old you into the new land. That is the final work waiting ahead. The next part is not about escaping the past. It is about becoming the person who can enter a new chapter without rebuilding the same old cycle inside it. Chosen one, you have reached the final crossing. The question is no longer whether something has changed. You have seen the pattern. You have named the resistance. You have recognized the season that no longer fits. Now the work becomes quieter, because movement is not complete until the old identity stops traveling with you. You can leave a place and still carry its fear. You can end a cycle and still carry its rules. You can enter a new opportunity while expecting the same rejection that shaped the old one. That is why this final part is not about speed. It is about becoming ready to move without rebuilding yesterday inside tomorrow. The first stage was detachment. You learn that release does not require hatred. You learn that love can remain even when access changes. You learn that gratitude can honor the past without turning the past into a permanent address. That freedom was necessary because your hands cannot receive something new while they are gripping what already ended. The second stage was clearing. You began noticing where your attention leaked. Old obligations became visible. Repeated arguments lost their power. The need to explain yourself started weakening. And as those patterns lost access, you discovered that what felt like emptiness was actually room being created for a different kind of life. Now comes the third stage. Accelerated fulfillment begins when your inner life stops pulling in opposite directions. You are not asking for the new, while secretly protecting every doorway back to the old. Your energy becomes more unified. Your decisions become cleaner, and your preparation begins carrying the same direction as your prayers. Do not misunderstand acceleration. It does not always mean everything happens quickly. Sometimes acceleration means you stop losing years to the same decision. Sometimes it means a boundary that once took 6 months of torment now takes one honest conversation. Sometimes it means you recognize misalignment before it becomes another long season. That is real progress. Speed is not only measured by how fast circumstances change, it is also measured by how quickly you stop abandoning what you already know. A wiser chosen one can move slowly outside while becoming very fast at recognizing old patterns inside. This is where your future starts to feel different. You no longer need chaos to convince you that change is necessary. You do not need another betrayal to justify a boundary. You do not need complete exhaustion before allowing yourself to rest. You do not need a door to slam 10 times before accepting that another direction deserves your attention. You are learning earlier. You are listening earlier. You are preparing earlier. That is what maturity looks like when it becomes practical. The lesson no longer has to become unbearable before you honor it. Chosen one. Imagine the version of you who lives 6 months from now, not a fantasy version with no problems. Imagine a grounded version who has stopped negotiating with the same old fear. Their mornings feel different because their attention is not immediately pulled into yesterday. Their decisions carry less noise because they no longer require universal approval. Picture the room around that person. Maybe the address changed, maybe it did not. Maybe the job changed, maybe it did not. The deeper difference is that the atmosphere inside them changed. They know which responsibilities are theirs. They know which voices deserve influence. They know that peace does not require everyone to agree. That person does not wake up chasing signs. They wake up remembering direction. They pray, observe, and take the next responsible step. When fear appears, they do not treat it as a prophecy. They ask what the fear contains, keep the useful information, and release the imagined disasters. This is how the new chapter becomes sustainable. You do not need to become fearless. You need to become less governed by fear. You do not need perfect confidence. You need a stable identity that can continue even when confidence rises and falls. The warrior of light in you is becoming calmer. You do not need to fight every person. You do not need to expose every misunderstanding. You do not need to prove that your movement was justified. The strongest evidence will be the life that grows after you stop feeding the old cycle. There will be people who expect the old version of you. They may test the old door. They may speak to the version who always answered immediately, always rescued, always apologized first, or always returned after being mistreated. Your new assignment will require you to respond from who you are becoming, not from who they remember. That can feel uncomfortable. Growth often feels rude to people who were accustomed to unlimited access. But you can remain kind without becoming available to every old pattern. You can remain loving without reopening what wisdom taught you to close. Your boundary does not need anger to remain a boundary. Your decision does not need an enemy to remain a decision. Your future does not need the past to become ugly before you are allowed to continue. This is the sacred discipline of moving cleanly. Do not carry revenge. Do not carry the need to be understood. Do not carry a secret plan to make people regret losing access to you. Those burdens keep the past emotionally alive even when your body has already left the room. Move because the chapter is complete. Move because your assignment requires room. Move because the person you are becoming cannot keep paying for peace with self-abandonment. Move because alignment deserves action. And when I say move, remember what we established. Your movement must fit your actual life. It can begin as planning. It can begin as saving. It can begin as learning. It can begin as one honest no. It can begin as one responsible yes. For some of you, movement will become physical later. You may relocate. You may change work. You may enter a new community. But the first crossing still happens inside. You stop defining yourself by the place you are leaving, and you stop assuming the future must repeat what happened there. This matters because unresolved identity travels. If you believe every room will reject you, you may enter a healthy room already defensive. If you believe love must be earned through sacrifice, you may find new people and recreate old exhaustion. If you believe security requires silence, you may carry the same silence into a new opportunity. So before you ask God for a new environment, ask Him to reveal every old agreement that cannot go with you. Ask Him to show you where fear became a rule. Ask Him to show you where pain became an identity. Ask Him to show you where survival became your definition of wisdom. There is no shame in discovering those patterns. Awareness is a gift when it leads to responsibility. You are not required to hate the version of you who survived. That version kept going with the tools available at the time. Now you honor that survival by learning better ways to live. This is what healing can look like in a spiritual journey. You stop insulting the person you used to be. You thank them for carrying you this far, and then you release the rules they needed in places you no longer inhabit. Compassion toward your old self makes transformation steadier. Chosen one, the fourth stage is bigger than your own comfort. Generational legacy begins when your new pattern becomes visible enough to teach someone after you. The cycle does not truly break only because you escaped it. It breaks when the wisdom gained from your freedom changes what gets passed forward. Maybe your children learn that love can include boundaries. Maybe your family sees that leaving an expired season does not require hatred. Maybe someone younger watches you choose responsibility over fear, and they realize that endurance is not the only form of faithfulness. Maybe nobody applauds immediately. That is okay. Generational change often looks strange while it is happening. The person breaking the cycle is rarely understood by everyone living comfortably inside the cycle. Your job is not to force them to understand. Your job is to live the new pattern consistently. Peace becomes credible through repetition. Boundaries become credible through repetition. Wise movement becomes credible through repetition. One calm decision does not create a legacy, 1,000 aligned choices do. The future is built by what you repeat after the emotional moment passes. Inner contradiction is exhausting. Saying one thing while building another drains energy. Asking for change while protecting every old pattern drains energy. Praying for freedom while keeping every chain polished drains energy. Alignment returns that energy. You may still be tired, you may still have responsibilities, but the exhaustion changes because you are no longer spending so much strength fighting yourself. There is also grief here. Do not rush past it. A completed season can deserve tears. A relationship can be wrong for your future and still contain memories worth honoring. A place can become too small while still carrying moments you will always cherish. Grief does not mean go back. Grief means something mattered. Let it move through you without turning it into a command. You can cry and continue. You can miss and continue. You can bless and continue. The mature heart can hold two truths. I loved this, and it is complete. I learned here, and I must continue. I am grateful, and I cannot remain the same. That is not betrayal. That is growth without contempt. There may also be moments when the old season suddenly looks beautiful again. Memory is selective. When uncertainty rises, the mind can edit out what made change necessary. It remembers the warm parts. It forgets the repeated pattern that brought you to the edge. When that happens, return to your record. Remember the whole story. Do not demonize the past, but do not romanticize it either. Wisdom sees both the gift and the limitation. You are not leaving because nothing good existed. You are moving because good memories cannot become the only reason to remain inside a completed assignment. This is where your final sign protects you. The sign was never one bad day. It was convergence. It was repetition. It was the same message arriving after emotion settled. That is why one nostalgic evening should not erase months of clarity. Chosen one, you asked to know when it was time. You wanted God to tap you so clearly that you could not mistake it. Perhaps the tapping did not come as one loud knock. Perhaps it came as 100 quiet moments that kept pointing toward the same truth. The discomfort tapped you, the closure tapped you, the detachment tapped you, the resistance tapped you, the repeated direction tapped you, the change in your prayers tapped you. Now you can stop demanding that heaven become louder than your refusal to acknowledge what has already been repeated. Your responsibility is not to manufacture certainty. Your responsibility is to respond to enough clarity with enough wisdom for the next step. This is where I want to pray with you, not for reckless speed, not for dramatic proof, for wisdom, peace, courage, and clean movement. God, meet the person listening right now. You know the season they have survived. You know the questions they carried into rooms where nobody heard them. You know every night they asked for clarity, and every morning they tried to function while the answer still felt incomplete. Give them wisdom for the next step, not false urgency, not fear disguised as faith. Give them the ability to separate a repeated pattern from one emotional moment and help them recognize what is actually theirs to do. Where they need patience, make patience peaceful. Where they need action, make action clear. Where they need counsel, bring mature voices. Where they need planning, give them discipline to prepare before pressure forces a decision. Protect them from impulsiveness. Protect them from paralysis. Keep them from confusing chaos with courage, and keep them from calling endless postponement wisdom. Show them what cannot travel forward. Reveal the old beliefs that were useful for survival, but harmful for freedom. Show them where they still expect rejection before it happens. Show them where they still overgive because they fear losing love. Teach them that boundaries do not make them cruel. Teach them that rest does not make them lazy. Teach them that completion does not make them disloyal. Give them the grace to bless what ended. Give them the strength to grieve without returning. Give them the maturity to remember the good without denying the truth that the chapter has finished. Where fear says they need every answer, remind them that wisdom can work with partial visibility. Where shame says they waited too long, remind them that awareness can still become movement today. Restore the energy that was trapped in old arguments. Restore the attention that was spent chasing approval. Restore the imagination that became afraid to picture anything beyond the familiar. Let their preparation become peaceful. Let each responsible step strengthen their sense of identity. Let their actions become evidence that they can trust themselves to carry what you place before them. If relocation is part of their path, guide the practical details. If a relationship boundary is needed, give them language that is clear and kind. If work must change, give them patience to build before they leap. If the movement is internal, help them honor it, even when nobody else can see it. Let them stop measuring transformation only by visible circumstances. Make them a watchman without suspicion. Make them a warrior without unnecessary war. Make them a cycle breaker without contempt for the people who came before them. Let their freedom become generous. Let their peace become something others can feel. Let the next generation inherit more wisdom and less fear, because this person chose to live differently. Guard them from pride when progress comes. Let success deepen humility. Let opportunity increase responsibility. Let every new door be tested by character, not only excitement. And when the new season becomes familiar, keep them awake. Do not let the breakthrough from yesterday become the limitation of tomorrow. Teach them to recognize completion again when another assignment has given everything it was meant to give. Give them courage to move without carrying revenge. Courage to move without carrying the need to prove anything. Courage to move without demanding that everyone bless the decision. Let them move cleanly. Let them move wisely. Let them move in peace. And when uncertainty returns, remind them of what they already learned. They do not need a perfect map. They need the next responsible step. They do not need every voice to agree. They need alignment between truth, wisdom, and action. May the old cycle end here. May fear stop pretending to be destiny. May people-pleasing stop pretending to be love. May delay stop pretending to be discernment. May this person become a living example that faith can be grounded, that boundaries can be loving, and that movement can be both courageous and responsible. Let what begins quietly become a legacy. Let one wise decision become a new family pattern. Let one honest boundary become permission for someone younger to live without the same fear. And when they look back, let them remember this season without bitterness. Let them see how the closing doors made room. Let them see how detachment created freedom. Let them see how resistance exposed what still needed to change. Let them understand that the final sign was not one dramatic event. It was the pattern that became impossible to ignore. Amen. Chosen one, stay quiet for one moment after that prayer. You do not need to manufacture a feeling. You do not need tears. You do not need chills. Simply notice what remains when the words stop. What truth still feels present? What next step keeps returning? What can you prepare without creating chaos? That is where your attention belongs. Do not leave this message and immediately search for 10 more confirmations. Let this be the moment where searching becomes preparing. Let your next action be small enough to complete and meaningful enough to prove that you are no longer asleep inside the old pattern. Maybe tonight you write the plan. Maybe tomorrow you make the call. Maybe this week you organize the money, documents, schedule, or conversation that movement will require. Then stop, breathe, review, continue. You do not need to transform your entire life in one burst. Sustainable movement respects your nervous system, your responsibilities, and the people genuinely connected to your care. The new chapter does not need a frantic you. It needs a steady you. This is the version of you heaven has been preparing. Not someone who never feels fear. Someone who no longer worships fear. Not someone who always knows the outcome. Someone who can carry uncertainty without surrendering responsibility. You have become more discerning than you realize. You notice patterns earlier. You recover from emotional storms faster. You are learning to let silence provide information instead of immediately filling it with pursuit. Honor that growth. Do not insult your progress, because the final destination is still hidden. A seed does not become meaningless because the tree is not visible yet. Preparation is real movement, even before other people can recognize the result. Soon the people who said nothing was changing may notice that everything changed, not because you created a dramatic scene, because your choices began producing a different life. They may notice you speak differently. You respond more slowly. You protect your time. You stop volunteering for unnecessary chaos. You become harder to manipulate because urgency no longer controls you. They may call it distance. You will know it as alignment. They may call it luck when opportunities begin appearing. You will remember the months of clearing that made you ready to recognize them. They may say you changed suddenly. You will know the change happened quietly, one boundary and one decision at a time. That is why you do not need applause now. The fruit will speak later. Chosen one. The final sign was never designed to make you dependent on signs forever. It was designed to graduate you into discernment. A mature chosen one does not spend life demanding supernatural reassurance for every ordinary responsibility. You pray, you observe, you gather facts, you listen to wise counsel, and then you decide. That is not less spiritual. It is a deeper form of stewardship. You are trusted with a life. Your decisions shape it. Your patterns teach others what is normal. Your boundaries determine what receives access. Treat that responsibility as sacred. And when the next door opens, do not enter, asking whether you deserve it. Enter prepared to serve well. Enter prepared to learn. Enter prepared to remain humble. Worthiness is not arrogance. You can believe you are worthy of peace without believing you are above anyone. You can believe you deserve respect without demanding worship. You can believe your gifts matter without making other people smaller. That balance will protect your next season. Your assignment is not to become untouchable. It is to become grounded enough that every criticism does not rewrite your identity. Your assignment is not to become independent of everyone. It is to become connected without disappearing. Your assignment is not to escape responsibility. It is to stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours while becoming more faithful to the ones that are. That is maturity. If you receive this message, mark your decision with one word. Write "ready" below. Let that word mean you are ready to prepare, ready to listen, ready to move responsibly, and ready to stop demanding that fear disappear before life can continue. And if you want to keep walking with this community, subscribe and stay connected. Not as a bargain with heaven, not as a ritual that guarantees an outcome. Stay because repeated reminders can help you protect the identity you are building when the old voices become loud again. You are not joining a crowd of perfect people. You are standing with people, learning to recognize patterns, break cycles, and move with faith that still respects wisdom. Chosen one, remember the entire journey. The discomfort was not meaningless. The closure was not the end of your story. The detachment was not coldness. The resistance was not automatic proof that you were wrong. Each piece revealed something. The old place became uncomfortable because your inner agreement with it was changing. The fallback doors closed because part of you needed to stop building every future around returning. The resistance rose because uncertainty was losing its power to keep you frozen. And the final sign appeared when all of those pieces converged. You did not miss it. You were living inside it. Now move in the way wisdom requires. Move through preparation. Move through truth. Move through one responsible step after another. Leave behind the need to prove yourself. Leave behind the old contract with fear. Leave behind the belief that your life cannot change until everybody understands. Carry the lessons. Carry gratitude. Carry humility. Carry discernment. And when you reach the new place, do not ask whether the old you would have felt comfortable there. The old you was trained for a different season. Ask whether the person you are becoming can live there with integrity. That is the question that matters now. Chosen one. The tapping has become clear. The waiting season has taught what it needed to teach. The road does not need to reveal every mile before your feet can begin. Prepare what you can. Release what is complete. Honor what is true. Then move, not in panic, not in revenge, not to escape yourself. Move because you are finally ready to meet the life that requires the